Pase TV show.
Sak Pase, Sak Pase TV.
N'a regardé Sak Pase TV show avec Guylene.
Sak Pase, Sak Pase TV. Sak Pase, Sak Pase TV.
Salut tout le monde qui branché Sak Pase TV show. Nom c'est Guylene et encore une fois, on remercie nous du fait que nous quittons nous rentrer la caille aujourd'hui pour nous suivre l'émission Sak Pase TV show ou bien sur Island TV, Haïti TV ou Télé Pacifique ou bien tout si nous regardez sur YouTube, c'est Sak Pase TV et puis qu'on est capable de choisir n'importe quel show pour nous capable de suivre n'importe le que nous voulons ou bien pour plus d'informations nous capable aller sur sakpasemedia.com. Jeudi, invité du jour, c'est M. Cazeau, qui est avocat ville North Miami. Il est city attorney of the city of North Miami. So, pour vous-même qui vous branchez là, si vous aimez l'émission ça, pour former vos amis, captez nous sur la chaîne côté que nous regardez là. Encore une fois, nous c'est Guylene Berry. Nous avons une pause, nous tournons tant de fois ça sur Sak Pase TV show. Your voice, your vision, your story.
Come to discover a place where magic and tradition are a part of the fabric of everyday life. Experience the flavors of a unique cuisine. Let yourself be dazzled by its colors and lose yourself in its rhythms. Come to Haiti. Discover the soul of the Caribbean.
Vivez l'expérience.
Ou gen cancer. Trois mots ou pas tap jamais m'entendre. Mais juste parce que diagnostic cancer capable yon choc pour système ou, pas vle di chirurgie cancer c'est même bagay là. Li rele Edge Radio Surgery. Li puissant, li efficace et li pas senti tant que c'est chirurgie ou fait du tout. Yo pas coupé ou et ou pas arrêté l'hôpital. Gen seulement yon seul grain l'hôpital dans Miami qui offre opération Edge Surgery ça. Rele North Shore Medical Centers Cancer Center dans 305 835 61 73 pour ka ouais si Radio Surgery a bon pour vous.
Bon retour sur l'émission Sak Pase TV show. Comme moi t'ai annoncé déjà, nous ensemble avec Monsieur Cazeau qui va dire nous qui est-ce que lié, côté le sorti, côté lié et côté le prali. Parce que sur Sak Pase TV show, it's about your voice, your vision, your story. Sak Pase Jeff. Oh yeah, we don't be back at Pase. Jeff, nous connaissons que vous êtes city attorney, the city of North Miami, a city on the move.
Right.
And you just joined them recently.
2 months.
2 months? Oh wow, that's kind of
About 2 months.
So tell us about you. Where have you been before? What is your experience? What makes you Haitian?
Well, I was born in Haiti. I was born in Port-au-Prince. Lived there for about 3 years and moved to New York City, Brooklyn.
Interesting.
Grew up in Queens. Went to school there. Went to school in Long Island at Stony Brook University. Joined the Navy. After college, spent about 9 years in the military.
9 years.
9 years in the military. My last tour of duty was here in Miami at U.S. Southern Command.
And you fell in love with Miami.
I fell in love with Miami. This is the first time I was in a large Haitian American community. I didn't grow up in a Haitian community in New York. I came down here, liked the energy, and decided to just stay. So I went to law school. That was 3 years, and then got out, went to different jobs. Eventually, I got into the municipal law area. I was an assistant city attorney in Surfside. I was the city attorney in Florida City, and then this opportunity came, and I became the city attorney of Miami.
Interesting. You see, I never knew that you were in the Army.
Oh, really?
Navy.
Navy.
Yes. Oh, yes. The Navy people, they do not want to say Army. It's Navy.
Navy.
Yes. Before we get into the law,
Sure.
I'd like to ask you some questions about joining the Navy because we have a lot of our youth these days. They're thinking about whether they should join the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. What was the experience like to be in the Navy?
It was probably the best decision I ever made in my entire life. I had gone to college, had always had an interest in the military, but didn't really know what to do, how it goes, how it works, any of that stuff. So I enlisted, which you really shouldn't do if you've got a college degree. You should probably go in as an officer, but I didn't know it any better, so I enlisted. And I spent 2.5 years as an enlisted person. But it was at a a highly technical field. I was an electronic warfare technician, which is basically the guy who listens to listens to radars to decide whether you're listening to a ship, a plane, or missile. Did that for 2.5 years, and then got picked up for officer candidate school, and I went to officer candidate school, and I became an officer. So for me, it was the best thing I ever did. Coming out of college, I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. Didn't know how the world worked. And then going there, going to the military, and progressing through the military was an amazing experience for me. Ultimately, my last job I could have done for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, the Navy moves you around. I couldn't do that forever, so that was it for me. That's when I had to leave and go to law school. But it was an amazing experience.
So what propelled you to join the Navy?
Honestly, it was 1990. I had just gone through, it was kind of funny, I had just gone my last year of college. I had done a study abroad program. I always felt like I was Haitian. I still had a Haitian passport all my life. I'd never become a naturalized American citizen.
Oh, you're still Haitian?
Yeah, well,
I mean, you still have your passport, your Haitian
I still have my
passport.
Haitian passport. I hadn't been naturalized. But I went to England, and I realized in England that I was an American, and I should probably at some point become an American. So I came back, and I went through.
So you still can be president of Haiti.
That's what I understand. I've got a couple of things I probably have to do before I did that. But yeah, so I did that, and then that year was the year we had. It was the year we were about to go to war with Iran, the first Gulf War, and I just had, it was like my patriotic duty, and so I joined that summer, and I didn't actually go to boot camp until November of that year, and then by the time I got out, the war was over. But by that point, I was already in the military. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were born in Haiti.
Yeah.
Still have his passport, so you can still be president of
I had
Haiti.
my passport. I got naturalized. So,
Oh,
yeah.
at the time you had your passport.
At the time I had
You
passport.
ruined it. Like, I would have fun.
No. To be that's one thing. To be an officer, you have to be an American citizen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had to go.
That's good information.
Yeah, you have to be an American citizen. And actually, there's some jobs that you need to be an American citizen in order to get the job, especially the more intelligence type work that we're doing. You have to be an American citizen to do that. So luckily, I was, and I was able to do that.
Interesting. So you were very young. You chose to join the Navy, and that opened many doors for you.
More than you can imagine.
Interesting. So for the youth that are watching, for the mothers, the fathers that are watching right now, what would you tell them if their kids want to join the Navy, the Army, the Air Force?
Sure, it's a tough life. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the military. You're fighting and perhaps doing other things on behalf of your country, which is, some of it isn't pleasant. It's not a trade school. It really is, you're defending your country, and some people may lose their lives. So you have to never lose sight of that. But other than that, the training you get, just life experiences. I mean, for me, just sitting in a wardroom with other officers and knowing how, what the forks are and all that stuff. You learn all that. Going overseas and speaking to diplomats. I mean, my last job, I literally would get calls, and I'd have to pick a diplomat up at the airport, and I'd have to take him around Miami as part of my job at Sak Pase. So, all those experiences, you can't get that anymore. People would pay for that experience, and I was getting paid doing it. So
I love it.
It was a great experience.
Interesting.
So if your kids want to go to the military, don't try to talk them out of it. For some people, it's the best thing that could have happened. So for me, it was the best thing that could have happened. I didn't know where I was going with my life. So I'm here today because I made that decision.
Well, thank you for sharing. Pour nous, on a regardé, pour nous, on a suivi, nous avons tant d'expérience, Jeff, qui était dans la Navy, Et je ne dis, c'est city attorney of city of North Miami. So when we come back, we're going to find out how did the Navy experience played out in him serving as the city attorney to the city of North Miami. Now to the down into Sak Pase TV show.
Sak Pase TV show, hosted by Miss Berry. Sak Pase TV show motivates, entertains, and informs. Your support is very much appreciated. We're looking forward for your sponsorship, contribution, and support. Watch us on this channel or on demand at sakpasetv.com. For more information, contact us at sakpasemedia.com.
Ou gen cancer. Trois mots ou pas tap jamais remen tande. Mais juste parce que diagnostic cancer capable yon choc pour système ou, pas vle di chirurgie cancer c'est même bagay la. Li rele Edge Radio Surgery. Li puissant, li efficace et li pas senti tant que c'est chirurgie ou fait du tout. Yo pas coupé ou et ou pas arrêté l'hôpital. Gen seulement yon seul grain l'hôpital dans Miami qui offre opération Edge Surgery ça. Rele North Shore Medical Centers Cancer Center dans 305 835 61 73 pour ka ouais si Radio Surgery a bon pour vous.
Now, c'est Sak Pase TV show. Et aujourd'hui, nous ensemble avec Monsieur Jeff Cazeau, ici avocat, ville North Miami. Avant que nous continuions ensemble avec l'invité du jour, nous voulons faire nous connaître que nous avons quelques petites annonces pour nous. Si toutefois que nous cherchons information pour les petits mounios capables d'aller dans after school care, ou bien pendant le temps d'été, ou bien nous cherchons un programme pour toute famille, l'important pour nous checker si nous dans Broward County, aller sur le website Children's Services Council of Broward County sur www.cscbroward.org www.cscbroward.org ou bien nous pouvons appeler 211 pour des informations, des informations pour toute famille. Et tout, si nous avons un business, nous avons fait business ensemble avec Broward County, gagnez un peu d'informations sur le website Office of Economic and Small Business Development dans Broward County. Pour plus d'informations, allez sur broward.org/econdev, broward.org/econdev, ou bien nous pouvons juste appeler Miss Jasmine Jones dans 954 357 6400 954 357 6400. Et si nous avons fait réclame pour business, nous, soit pour Sak Pase Media, ou bien nous avons fait réclame sur Cazeau Femmes, qui c'est émission qui passe sur 1580 AM tous les jours à partir de 3 heures, nous sommes capables de contacter nous dans 321 710 90 10 321 710 9010 ou bien nous pouvons aller sur le website sakpasemedia.com sakpasemedia.com. For all your advertising needs, we are here for you. Sak Pase Media, your passport into the Haitian community. Et qu'on y a suivi Sak Pase TV show, nous avons fait réclame ensemble avec nous tous sur Sak Pase TV show. Et comme on te dit nous déjà, invité du jour, c'est Monsieur Jeff Cazeau. Et Jeff, with your experience from the Army,
Navy.
oh, you know what? I can say Army.
It's okay. It's okay.
From the Navy.
From the Navy.
Yeah. Would you say that experience being in the Navy and now working as the city attorney to the city of North Miami, you learned something that you are putting into use right now in your current job?
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, being in the Navy, having gone through that whole Navy process, I mean, it changes your life. So there's things that I learned there that I continue to use to this day. I mean, there's things I learned there that I use in law school, that I use, I mean, the Navy, for one thing, you're multitask. You don't have one job in the Navy. I was a navigator, I was a legal officer, I was all sorts of different things at the same time.
So you were already an attorney then?
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
I wasn't. That was another interesting thing about the Navy is in the Navy they have the military code of justice, and they send you to a month-long school, and they teach you how to be a legal officer. For ships, my ship, I wasn't on a large ship, so they couldn't afford to have a real one. So they trained me to be a lawyer. So I did things like wills and rental agreements and all sorts of things like that. And I did court martials and all sorts of things. So you learn all that stuff while you're doing navigation and you're learning to firefight and you're doing all that stuff. And so to this day, you know, one of the things about being a city attorney is one of the most general laws, areas of law that there is, because you're dealing with employment law, you're dealing with municipal law, you're dealing with contract, criminal, you're negotiating with unions. I mean, there's all sorts of different things, and you have to be able to be flexible. You're not just a real estate attorney. You're not just a contract attorney. You're doing everything, and I'm never bored. And you never know what's going to come to you, and you learn how to deal with it.
That's interesting. So you were practicing law before you were a lawyer?
Yeah, I was.
How cool is that?
It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Up to a point.
So
Up to a point.
that is interesting. Now that you are the city attorney of North Miami, what is your experience like? How do you like it?
I love it. When I got selected, I got different people had different reactions. Obviously the way it happened, I had to go back and tell my partners because we had applied as a firm, and I ended up going in as an individual. And so you hear stories about the city and all that stuff, but I can tell you, I honestly love it. I'm glad I'm there now. I really am. Yeah.
Okay. So on a day-to-day basis, what do you do?
Wow. You never know. You plan out your day.
Yeah.
Maybe you're writing an ordinance, maybe you're writing a resolution, you're meeting with people, you have different outside attorneys that you're meeting, but then things happen. And someone comes into your office and says, hey, we have this issue, what do we do with it? And then you have to figure it out. You have to figure out, well, what do we do with this issue? And you come up with the answer. And a lot of times, you're the guy. I mean, you are the city attorney. There is, by the charter of the city, you are the person that makes the call when it comes to legal issues in the city. So it's a lot of responsibility. So it takes a different kind of a person, I think, to live up to that responsibility, take that on, that challenge.
I know that you've been practicing law for how many years now?
I graduated in 2002, so this would be my 14th year.
Your 14th year.
14th
So through your 14 years of practicing law, what area of law have you practiced?
I started out as a litigator, going back and forth in court. I kind of transitioned to construction law, where I was representing issues in construction, but still litigation. And then eventually I went to a firm that did that, but they also did municipal work. And that's when I became an assistant city attorney. And I was doing that along with all the other stuff that I was doing. And then eventually I kind of liked the city attorneys. And so I started focusing more on that. Eventually I left that firm, worked on my own. I had my own law firm. Then I had a partner for a little bit. And during that period of time, I became the city attorney for the city. Although I was representing other cities, I was representing boards for that period of time. And then I joined Becker and Polycroft. And Becker and Polycroft, I was mostly a lobbyist. I represented people before cities and boards.
Yeah.
I also
So what is that like to be a lobbyist? Do you have to be an attorney to be a lobbyist?
No, you don't. You actually don't have to be an attorney to be a lobbyist. My colleagues in my group, I was the only attorney in the Miami group. There were other lawyers who in DC and Broward who were lawyers. But my particular group, I was the only lawyer in the group. But people who say lobbying is a bad word. To me, it isn't. I've had to explain to my kids what lobbying is, and it's not a dirty word at all. It's someone who facilitates things. I mean, I've been involved in great projects.
Someone who facilitates things.
Yeah,
That's what
facilitate things. They facilitate projects. I mean, I've had projects people love, projects people didn't love, but always it was representing my client, trying to do something. And I don't make the decision. Ultimately, the board or the council makes a decision on the project that I bring, but you'll represent the client as best as you can. And for me, it was better in a lot of ways than the litigation, because a lot of times you're building. Litigation for me, you're always fighting. You have to deal with the other lawyer, and you're fighting, and people want to show who's bigger and all that stuff. But usually, when you're dealing with, mostly what I lobbied on were projects. So we're trying to build a community center, and I want to be the contractor that builds a community center. At the end, when you're done, there's a product there. There's a community center for and hopefully your project is doing something to better that community. So I like that a whole lot more than the litigation. Litigation, you're fighting over somebody's money. Yeah. And you try to do the best job that you can, but at the end of it, what do you actually have? Hopefully you have a happy client, but there's nothing. I can't drive down the street with my kid and say, hey, you know, that's the client I represent. But I can with lobbying. That's a building.
Yeah.
That building
You can
exists.
show your children,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
you see that rec building?
That
I help
build it. I
facilitate
help
it.
facilitate it.
Yeah.
That wing of the airport, that bookstore that's in the airport, I helped
Nice.
put it there, you know. So that I did enjoy that. Yeah.
So if someone wants to be a lobbyist, what, you want to say go again?
Lobbying, it's relationships, right?
Uh-huh.
So the best way I explain it to my kids when I have to like break it down simply, right? So your neighbor, you need a parking, you know, you need an extra parking spot. You're out of land, but your neighbor has an extra parking spot. If I walk in, I've never met that person, never talked to him, say, hey, I'd like to park my car in your parking spot. That person may not do it because he doesn't know who I am. But if you find out who his friend is, and his friend comes to you and says, hey, I know this person, he's a good guy. If you let him park your car there, nothing bad's gonna happen. You facilitate that conversation, and then maybe you'll be able to park in your neighbor's parking spot. And that's kind of the way I explain. That's how I explain it to my kids. So that's what a lobbyist does. It's not, you know, we always joke. It's not you're running around with bags of money and handing it to people. That's not what lobbying does. You know, people. When I've worked at firms that didn't understand it, that was a joke. They always say, where's the brown bag? But that's not really what lobbying is. It's really trying to facilitate conversations with people, and you know, and hopefully the people that you're talking to know you and trust you. You know, my thing was when I was a lobbyist is that I never bought anything to someone that I thought would put them in a bad light.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because if I bring a project to you and my client doesn't do what my client says, my client doesn't build that project in a period of time, the next time I come to you with a project, you may not let me park that car in that parking spot again. So you try to do the best you can, and you know, and always represent your client the best you can, and try to put it.
So in order for someone to be a lobbyist, that person needs to have
you have that
negotiation.
good negotiations. You need, ultimately, it's the contacts. I mean,
Yeah.
no one's gonna hire you if you don't know the person. Yeah, I'm not gonna just hire you because you say you know this person. You have to know it. So for me, it was a steady progression of working on people's campaigns for free. You know, being a campaign treasurer and learning that person, and then that person becomes an elected official, and then you know you learn other people.
Then you have access to them.
You have access to them, and you work with them. But you have to have that experience, knowing that person. Because if you don't know the person, then why would anybody pay you to go do anything or go speak to them? They can go speak to them on their own, right? So
I love it.
yeah.
We're going to take a break. Nous suivons Sak Pase TV Show. Donc, c'est Guylene Berry, ensemble avec nous aujourd'hui. C'est Monsieur Jeff Cazeau.
Come to discover a place where magic and tradition are a part of the fabric of everyday life. Experience the flavors of a unique cuisine. Let yourself be dazzled by its colors and lose yourself in its rhythms. Come to Haiti. Discover the soul of the Caribbean.
Vive l'expérience.
Bon retour, nous suivons Sak Pase TV Show. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes avec avocat Guylene Miami, Jeff Cazeau. Il parle nous de passé, il parle nous un peu de présent. Et qu'on y a un particulier important pour nous apprendre à connaître qui côté le braler, qui visionne pour Guylene Miami, et en tant qu'avocat Guylene, qui projet qu'il a travaillé sur. So Jeff, what is your project? What are you working on?
Well, okay. So first thing I have to explain is that as the city attorney, I don't drive the direction of the city.
Yeah.
So the direction of the city is driven by the council, the mayor and council, and the manager.
Yeah.
They come up with the ideas. You know, let's create a CRA. Let's do a Chinatown. And my job is to implement those ideas. ideas. My
Yes.
job is to make sure that the ideas that they implement, that they come up with are legal,
Yeah.
that we do whatever it is that we need to implement them to survive any legal challenges if we're sued. So I take a step back. It's really part of the reason I love being in the city at this time is that we have a great council, we have a great mayor and council, we have a great manager, and they're coming up with some great ideas. I mean, the idea of the Chinatown.
Yeah. Tell us about the Chinatown.
Well, I mean, most people, I think, probably thought, what is this? Chinatown in North Miami. I mean, to be honest, before I joined the city, I was a little bit skeptical myself. But the idea is to create a district that resembles the architecture of China. And the idea
Would
is...
they be Chinese?
It can be, but it's not so much as moving Chinese individuals into that community as much as it is bringing in money and tourism to that community. If you ever gone to a Chinatown, if you go to a Chinatown in Washington D.C., although that's not the greatest Chinatown there, I've been there a couple of times. It's not
Or New York,
New York, although that's gone also. But the idea is to create an area of the community that would drive tourism. And also drive investment. Everyone knows the Chinese have a lot of money, and who better to invest in a Chinatown than the Chinese.
Si toutefois que nous avons participé dans ce qu'a fait dans ville North Miami, nous sommes capables d'assister à une réunion que nous faisons chaque 2 semaines. C'est deuxième mardi et quatrième mardi du mois à partir de 7h jusqu'à... Donc, il y a de la courte, il y a de la longue. Pour nous-mêmes qui brancher, c'était avocat ville North Miami, Jeff Cazeau, qui a fait un côté ensemble avec nous sur Sak Pase TV Show. Nom c'est Guylene Berry. Songez aller sur YouTube et page nous c'est Sak Pase TV et comme ça nous sommes capables de suivre toutes les émissions que nous gagnons. Songez like page nous Guylene sur Facebook, Guylene Berry sur Facebook et en même temps tout nous sommes capables de faire réclamation avec nous sur sakpasemedia.com ou bien relez-nous dans 321 710 90 10 et songez capter cause et femmes tous les jours à partir de 3h sur 1580 AM pour sakpasemedia.com. Je remercie nous encore une fois pour tant que nous te plan pour nous regarder l'émission par nous, Sak Pase TV Show avec Guylene Berry. À bientôt.